He seemed to recall at least one of the times in which there had not been a barrier. Whether it was true or just a figment of his imagination, he wasn't certain. Even if he had used a condom each time they had made love, condoms weren't without flaws, and when you made love as many times as they had, anything was possible, even an unplanned pregnancy. She was the only one who could put his mind to rest by telling him whether or not the child, which should have been born by now, was his. If it wasn't, she must have slept with someone else around the same time she had slept with him. That was something he didn't want to think about. And if the child was his, he would do the right thing. The only thing a Westmoreland could do if they were foolish enough to get caught in such a situation. He would ask her to marry him to give their child his name. After a reasonable amount of time, they could file for a divorce and part ways. He could tolerate a short-term wife if he had to. He had recently retired and was about to embark on another career. He had joined a partnership with a few of his cousins to open a chain of security offices around the country. He refused to be reminded that a marriage of convenience was how things had started out between his brother Durango and his wife Savannah, and that they were now a happily married couple. Quade was glad things worked out the way they had for them. However, the situation with him and Cheyenne was different. Durango had fallen hard for Savannah from the first time he had seen her at their cousin Chase's wedding. But it had been lust, and only lust, that had driven his desire for Cheyenne that night. If it had been more than that, he would have taken the time to get to know her. He'd only had one goal in mind after meeting Cheyenne, and that was finding a way to get her into his bed. One of the downsides of his former job was the long periods he'd had to put his social life on hold. It had been during one of those times, when his testosterone had been totally out of whack, that he met Cheyenne. He'd gone a long time without a woman, and Cheyenne had been a prime target for a one-night stand. But he hadn't meant to get her pregnant, if that's what he'd actually done. So here he was on his way to Charlotte, North Carolina, to find out if he was the father of her baby. He had contacted the ad agency and discovered not only that Cheyenne was her real name, but that she was also a model, which was the reason she had been on the cover of that magazine. He shouldn't have been surprised to learn of her profession, since she had to have been the most beautiful woman he'd ever met. On the cover of that magazine, with her pregnancy proudly displayed for the camera, she had still looked radiant and breathtakingly beautiful. Quade felt the plane tilt upward as it took off. He leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes, deciding now was a perfect time to relive those long and passionate hours he had spent in bed with Cheyenne nearly 10 months ago. Quade felt hot, edgy, and he couldn't sleep. Muttering a curse, he eased out of bed and looked around the hotel room. The president was to arrive in 2 days, and Quade and his men had checked out everything, especially the route the motorcade would be taking. There had been rumblings of a planned protest, but a spokesman for the Egyptian government had contacted him earlier to say the matter had been taken care of. He wondered if the bar downstairs was still open. He could definitely use a drink to take the edge off. For some reason, this place and sleeping alone in this bed was reminding him just how long it had been since he'd had any sort of intimate physical contact with a woman. Too long. Instead of getting a drink, Quade decided to take a walk on the beach. He eased into a pair of jeans and pulled a t-shirt over his head. After sliding his feet into a pair of sandals, he checked the clock on the nightstand. It was almost 1 a.m. As he left his room, closing the door shut behind him, he thought about the phone conversation he'd had with his mother earlier. She had surprised the hell out of him by saying his cousin Clint had gotten married. He had just seen his cousin a few months before at his brother Spencer's wedding. They had talked. Clint had been excited. He had just retired as a Texas Ranger to become a partner with Durango and a childhood friend, McKinnon Quinn, in their horse breeding business. Not once had Clint mentioned anything about a woman. And now he was married? There had to be more to it than the romantic tale his mother had weaved. Within no time at all, Quade had caught the designated elevator, the one that would take him 6 levels down to a patio that led to the beach. Most of the hotel was empty. The majority of the rooms were already reserved for the president's visit. The First Lady would be present on this trip, along with a number of other dignitaries. The visit would last 3 days, and Quade would be working non-stop.